Jake Tapper's career? Well, hope so. At the very least, she has altered it forever. We're going to show you this unbelievable exchange yesterday on her podcast. And Jake Tapper, well, he's the squirrel we always knew that he was. Also, we're getting a little bit more insight into who was really making decisions and running the White House when Joe Biden obviously couldn't do the job. And, well, the answer is going to enrage you. We'll give you all the details in a moment. Also, Marco Rubio absolutely destroyed two senators yesterday, Tim Kaine from Virginia and our favorite Chris Van Hollen, Maryland man. And he was absolutely brilliant, Rubio was. We're going to show you every detail of that. And James Comey, we just can't quit him. And what he did when he was confronted with Jesse Waters' producer was hilarious. And you'll see that too. Plus, the future of AI and our national security. We do a deep dive with an AI expert, all in this very jam-packed show. We better get right to it. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name's Larry O'Connor, but you can call me Larry. You may have heard about this. It's this July. It's called the Rio Reset. What's going to happen is there's a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio de Janeiro. This is a block of emerging superpowers. We're talking about China, not our pal. Russia, not our pal. Iran, not our pal. India, to be determined. They're meeting with a goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. That's not good if you have dollars right now. They're calling it the Rio Reset. Now, they're pushing forward with these plans. This means the global demand for the U.S. dollar could decrease. That means the value of dollars that you have right now in your savings and retirement accounts could also be impacted. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, but the Rio Reset in July marks a pivotal moment. It means the BRICS objections may move from theoretical possibility to inevitable reality. You got to do something about this. Learn about diversifying your savings into gold. See if it's the right decision for you. The good news is this is free information for you to educate yourself with. Go to Birch Gold Group. They can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Get your free info kit right now by texting my name, Larry, to 989898. They've got an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, tens of thousands of happy customers. Let Birch Gold arm you with free, no obligation information. It's all in this info kit that they send you about owning gold before July. See, timing is important here. Don't be in a place where it's like, oh, I wish I had. Don't wish. Get the information now about owning gold before July, before the Rio Reset. Text my name, Larry, to 989898. Do that today. All right, yesterday was the big release date for Jake Tapper's book, where he sort of covers up the cover up and gives an excuse to the media and to Democrats about what they knew and when they knew it about Joe Biden's incapacity to be president. We've been covering this story quite a bit. You know how I feel about Jake Tapper. You know how I feel about this book. That said, there's still quite a bit of value in what's going on in the media right now, and specifically Jake Tapper's Dog and Pony show for his book launch. The way he is able to humiliate and debase himself just to sell this book is absolutely delicious. And it was so desperate for Jake Tapper. He was so desperate to make a coin on this story that he walked into the lion's den. His friend, they are apparently friends, Megyn Kelly, held absolutely nothing back. You should watch this entire podcast on the platform that you're sitting on right now. We share the platform, whatever she's on, I'm on too. Go where she is, find this show, watch the whole thing. We've curated some highlights for you. Okay, pay close attention to Jake in the middle with the deer in the headlights look, without the smart guy glasses, take note, and his co-author, Alex Thompson, who is like absolutely speechless. Can't even, I mean, he's there on screen, but boy, he doesn't want any part of what's going to happen to Jake Tapper here. Take it away, Megyn.
You covered the Biden presidency aggressively throughout the 4 years, and you didn't cover mental acuity hardly at all. I mean, time and time again, when issues came up, you seem to be running cover for the president.
I don't think
interested.
that's true.
Well, I mean, we'll start with the Laura Trump issue that you referred. Here it is. This happened in 2020.
Joe Biden, as we all know, has worked to overcome a stutter. How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
You are
to
no
watch somebody on stage search for
that's so
questions.
amazing.
You're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were
stuttering.
mocking his stutter. Yeah, I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline.
And it's very concerning to a lot of people that this could be the leader of the free world.
Okay.
That is all I'm saying. I genuinely feel sorry for Joe Biden.
I appreciate it. I'm sure it was from a place of concern. We all believe that. Laura Trump, thank you so much.
Do you want to apologize to Laura Trump now? You covered the.
What a stunning moment. And you'll get the response to that in just a second. But before Tapper wades into this and does his spin control that's been rehearsed and polished and practiced and scripted so that he can sell more books, I just want to point out that the real original sin in what you just saw was not necessarily Jake Tapper, not believing Laura Trump or peddling misinformation about the stutter for Joe Biden. I mean, that's part of the problem. But the real problem is how Jake Tapper and his pals go about their business every day in conducting what they call political journalism in Washington, D.C., especially on cable news. Did you see that? That was not a man who was acting as an interviewer trying to get information about important issues having to do with the campaign or about the governance of our nation from a key player in the Trump campaign back in 2020 so that his viewers could be better educated and informed voters. That's not what Jake Tapper was doing there. What Jake Tapper decided to do was engage in a debate, a fight. He wasn't trying to interview Laura Trump. He was trying to defeat Laura Trump. He was trying to humiliate Laura Trump. He was trying to publicly shame Laura Trump. He was trying to win the day so that Trump was diminished and so that Biden was rewarded. That's not journalism. That's something, but it ain't journalism. And that's the real original sin here. But Jake has an answer. Do you want to apologize to Laura Trump now? Do you, Jake?
Do you want to apologize to Laura Trump now?
I've already apologized to her. I called her months ago.
And what did she say?
I mean, I don't want to disclose the contents of a private conversation, but I thought the conversation went well.
Boy, oh boy, this is super duper convenient, isn't it? I called her months ago. I apologized privately, and I won't divulge what happened in the conversation. Funny this, we make mistakes sometimes on this show, and guess what? I correct the record, and I apologize to you publicly. When newspapers make a mistake, they correct the record publicly. It's never as public as the big blaring headline, right? You ever notice that? Washington Post, big blaring headline on a story that they get wrong. And then the correction is like, oh, by the way, we may have gotten that one wrong. But still, they do it publicly. Where's Jake Tapper's segment? Where's his big segment where he himself replays his interview with Laura Trump and says, yeah, I was wrong here. This is terrible. And I owe a public apology to Laura Trump, but even more so, I owe a public apology to every single voter out there who was misinformed because of me. Every single voter a month before the presidential election in 2020 who shared the same concerns about Joe Biden's mental acuity or lack thereof. And you may have thought exactly what Laura Trump was thinking, but because of my behavior, I shamed you. How dare you even think such a thing about Joe Biden? He has a stutter, and you're mocking him, you're shaming him. You're not fit for public discourse. I throw you off my show. What kind of psychological impact does that have on a viewer who also has concerns about Joe Biden and his brain? That wasn't journalism. That was advocacy. That was fighting the good fight for Team Biden. Great stuff with Megyn Kelly. Then he turned to CBS News, Jake Tapper did. He's selling a book, man. And suddenly, by the way, you may notice the smart guy glasses are on. I don't know what's different between doing a podcast with Megyn Kelly and doing a studio hit on CBS News, but here come the smart guy glasses.
Why wasn't this something that was reported about Joe Biden and this cognitive decline? Why wasn't this reported in real time? And obviously, people have criticized you in the book have said, why didn't you report it in real time?
So there were people reporting on what they saw. The conservative media was, to their credit, all over this. Now, they didn't have insider information, but they were just making sense of all the clips and all of the weird moments and off-putting moments.
Thank you, Newsbusters, for that. We're going to watch this one more time because it's just a beauty. Take a look with me.
Why wasn't this something that was reported about Joe Biden and this cognitive decline? Why wasn't this reported in real time? And obviously, people have criticized you in the book have said, why didn't you report it in real time?
So
real fast, just because I love mocking Jake Tapper because he deserves every ounce of it. I make fun of the smart guy glasses, right? Because they look like a prop. And people are like, well, he needs them because when he's on set in studio, he needs his reading glasses so he can see his notes, right, Larry? Take a look at the table in front of him. There's no notes. He doesn't have any paper. He's got to read the mug for CBS Evening News. No, they're a prop. They're a prop because he thinks it makes him look smarter. Me, I bounce back and forth with glasses too, but that's because I'm lazy. And the exact same day, he wasn't wearing glasses with Megyn Kelly. All right, but that said, take a listen because this is important, what he reveals here.
So there were people reporting on what they saw. The conservative media was, to their credit, all over this. Now, they didn't have insider information.
Okay, so he refers to conservative media, which I find fascinating. I would love for him to expand on that. Who exactly is conservative media? I'm curious. What makes one type of media conservative and the other type of media not conservative or liberal for that matter? And by the way, Jake, where do you fit in the equation? Are you conservative media? And if not, does that mean you're liberal media? Or are you the one media on the planet that doesn't have a political perspective? I'm sure that would be his answer. But yeah, it was conservative media. But then he caveats it with, well, but they didn't have insider information. Guess what, Jake? Right of center media, conservative media, independent media, whatever you want to call it, we told the truth and got this story right because we didn't have insider information, because we didn't have a pipeline to this White House, because we didn't have pals who were picking up the phone and saying, oh, he's fine, he's sharp as a tack. You don't want to embarrass yourself by saying that Biden's not good because he is, and then you'll look bad and you won't get invited to the party. That's why we got this story right. Numbskull, because we didn't have inside information. He tries like, wow, they were just observing clips, but they didn't actually have real information like me. Well, all of his inside information, all his inside sources, they didn't say a damn thing to him until after the election. Or if they did say anything to him, it was sharp as a tack, better than ever, behind closed doors. He's just a whirlwind. I can't keep up with him. So spare me the caveat. Conservative media got it right, but, they didn't have inside information. That's right. What were they doing?
But they were just making sense of all the clips and all of the weird moments and off.
That we were using our brains. We were using our eyes. We were seeing what you were seeing, but we didn't have any preconceived barrier to coming up with the obvious conclusion that Biden had, say it with me, mashed potato for brains. And I would love for that to be the follow-up question. Well, hold on. Jake, you had inside sources, which conservative media didn't have, but you also had eyes, you had ears, you have a brain, you saw the same clip. So why is it conservative media reached the correct conclusion and you and the rest of us didn't? Why? Why? But that question was never asked because they don't want to face the reality of that answer. But at least he admitted the conservative media got it right. How about an apology? How about an apology from the White House, who said that we were engaging in cheap fakes? How about an apology from Brian Stelter on your network, CNN? How about an apology on this dude's network, CBS, where they accused us of using cheap fakes and lies and propaganda? By the way, if conservative media got that right, I have another follow-up for you, Jake. They also got the Hunter Biden laptop story right, didn't they? They sure did. They also got the Russian collusion story right, didn't they? They sure did. They also got the COVID vaccine story right, didn't they? They also got COVID treatment story right, didn't they? They also had the Wuhan lab story right, didn't they? Maybe we should stop calling them conservative media, Jake. Maybe we should start calling them accurate media. Maybe that would be a good idea. That's conservative media. You know, you don't want to go over there. All right, swinging over to CNN, Alex Thompson, the co-author of this book from Axios, finally got to put in a few words because Jake didn't show up for this appearance. And he revealed something remarkable. This, of course, is on CNN, where it seems as though they have devoted about 80% of their programming to promote their pal Jake Tapper's book. I wonder if CNN itself gets some kind of cut in all of this, because it's pretty much 24/7 Jake Tapper book all day long. But here was the panel, and listen to what Alex Thompson, co-author of this book with Jake, reveals.
And Alex, the fact of the fake town hall is not actually the worst part of the story that you report in the book.
Yes, other campaigns have used fake town halls. Now, I would say those town halls usually are in addition to real town halls. Joe Biden was doing neither. This fake town hall was in order to film it so they could make it into campaign commercials. They filmed it in Delaware with supporters. But Joe Biden, at this point, this is the spring of 2024, Joe Biden's town hall, which was closed to press, was so bad that campaign officials determined that it was not usable for a campaign commercial. So they took 90 minutes, 2 hours out of the president's day. They filmed an entire town hall, and they determined that it was not usable. Now, some people say this was because Joe Biden was incoherent. He could not really articulate his thoughts in a pithy or even semi-normal way. Some people just said like the lighting was bad. That was sort of the 2 points of view. But the point is, it shows how like what the campaign status was in the spring of 2024 when they were trying to deal with a candidate that wasn't a decline.
Wait,
Yeah.
someone told you the lighting was bad?
That's one of the excuses.
You're saying that they spent millions of dollars to stage a town hall? Well, we didn't get the lighting right.
That was one of the excuses.
I mean,
Unbelievable.
and this comes back to the question of how many people were aware of things like that, but said nothing. And
Yeah, we'll get into that in a bit, and also who was really running the White House, which is the question we've been asking for quite some time too. We have some theories, and the book sort of shines a light on some of those theories as being pretty close to the truth. But did you catch that? I love Jennings jumping in there, because this is Alex Thompson. He just wrote this book about, remember, he got the award at the White House Correspondents' Dinner saying, oh, we missed the story. We got this story wrong. Who's we? We didn't, not over here. But then he's still falling into the trap. Okay. They paid for and produced a fake town hall, right? Where everyone in the town hall was on salary or invited by and had their questions written and scripted by the campaign. And they did this so they could record it and then use it for a commercial to make it look like he was really engaged in a town hall when it wasn't. It was a Potemkin village. The entire thing was created. It was a made-for-television infomercial. And they couldn't use it. That's how bad it was. They spent millions, as Jenny just said. And as Thompson is reporting, he said, well, and some of my sources say it was because Joe Biden was so incoherent and so bad that they couldn't use any of it. But then there are other sources who said the lighting was bad. And Jenny's like, wait, and you're giving both of them equal weight? You're telling me that you actually buy that? You believe these people who say we didn't use it because the lighting was bad? What the hell? How do you hire professional people? For God's sake, I can do lighting here. You're hiring a lighting designer. You literally get a production company to do this for you. And now, the lighting was bad. Nobody believes that except Alex Thompson, who is the same guy who said, we got the story wrong. Gee, I wonder why, if you're actually buying that bullshit about bad lighting. All right. Thompson had one more appearance yesterday, and that was on News Nation with Leland Vittert. And boy, this is the most insightful observation from the entire book, I think, about the media.
I think
But when you were reporting this, did people in his inner circle, did those that you talked to acknowledge that the media, were they surprised by how complicit the media was?
it was interesting. I had one conversation with someone. This was after the election while we were reporting this book. This person said, listen, yes, we deserve blame for X, Y, Z. We were hiding him. This person also sort of got in my face and they said, listen, the media deserves some blame too. Like, we were sort of amazed at some of the stuff we were able to spin
and get away with
on. They in some ways,
it's like the bank robber complaining that the safe wasn't locked or something.
They're just like, you guys should not have believed us so easily. And I thought that was like a really interesting, but I also think that's true. I think the media, in a lot of ways, just was not skeptical enough and did not remember the lesson that they do it to different degrees, but every White House lies.
Oh, and I love how they end that with every White House lies. Not like this, pal. Not like this. This is the mother of all lies. Because it's not just the lie, it's what the lie is about. This isn't about JFK hiding some, floozy in the closet so he can have a little dalliance. It's not about Bill Clinton get a little hoozy off the Oval Office. And it's not about the crowd size of the inauguration for Trump 1.0. No. This is about whether the president of the United States had a brain that was functioning. But I do love that. I mean, he's laughing about it, which is despicable. This is your profession, pal. These are your valued colleagues that you just admonished by saying we missed the story. Yeah, they missed the story, all right. And the White House was laughing at them. His source after the election says, yeah, we lied, but you guys let us get away with it. I can't believe what you guys let us get away with. During the Megyn Kelly interview, Jake Tapper noted that the Biden White House didn't like him, said they hate me. They hate me. So it's not like I had a good relationship with them. I only had one interview with Biden. Hunter Biden and other people inside the Biden White House are pushing back on this book at a Substack. This Substack is called Breaker Media. And on Breaker Media, listen to this really interesting story about Jake Tapper, our pal Jake, the best journalist in town. The actual original sin began in May 2015 with Beau Biden at Walter Reed National Medical Center in Bethesda, right? Maryland, and the family rallying around during the final days of his life. Tapper called Hunter repeatedly on his cell phone. This is May 2015 when Joe Biden was vice president. And his son Beau is dying. According to 3 people familiar with the situation, those calls went unanswered, but then Hunter received a call from a blocked number, so he picked it up. It was Tapper, who allegedly asked Hunter to call him when Beau died. Go F yourself, Jake, is what those who were present at the time recall Hunter telling Tapper. When Puck's Dylan Byers reported on the situation last week, he included a statement from Tapper, who called the accounts patently false lie. At no point in my life have I ever called Hunter Biden. I have never even had his phone number, and I would never have contacted a person immediately during such a challenging and personal time. That's a statement Tapper repeated to Breaker Media. When we reached Hunter, he told us, quote, "It would be impossible to forget or misremember something that upsetting and out of line during one of the toughest moments of my life. It happened. I was furious, and I told him so the next time I saw him, which was at the Super Bowl. At that game, Tapper approached Hunter to shake his hand, but Hunter responded that he was still so enraged about what had happened at Walter Reed that he would knock him out if they were not in a public setting." You got to watch Hunter, man. He's like in a crack rage sometimes. We're told Tapper would later demand an apology from Biden for his son's behavior. A spokesperson for Tapper doubled down. The idea that Jake would do something so heartless and yet the Bidens would subsequently offer him multiple sit-down interviews as well as agree to him moderating the debate with anyone hearing about it until now completely defies logic. Okay, so who do you believe in all of this, right? Well, just look at the behavior of the people involved here and you tell me if it fits their profile. Does the description of Hunter and his behavior toward Jake fit Hunter's profile based on what you know? 100%. Does Jake Tapper's behavior fit his profile and his ego and his narcissism? Well, let's read on. It's rare for the two protagonists of a story to disagree so profoundly, so we dug into the details. We found, for example, that Tepper did, in fact, cover those drug allegations. According to two other people who spoke with Hunter directly after the Walter Reed incident, Tapper did call. It was obviously transparent niceties and then right to business, as if one thing Hunter is thinking about as Bo is dying is to let me give Jake Tapper an exclusive. He was furious about it. It also defies logic that the campaign, rather than CNN, would get to choose who moderated a debate, and we can only find one instance where Tapper interviewed Biden when he was president. Right, not multiple sit-downs. Those in the Biden world note that Tapper had long been frustrated with the Bidens over a lack of access. Just before Biden's 2024 State of the Union address, a number of network anchors were invited to the White House for an off-the-record briefing from the president, as the speech was to be centered around the economy. CNN's Aaron Burnett was picked over Tapper. According to two people familiar with the matter, Tapper had a meltdown, calling numerous people in the White House to vent his anger at the decision. He was raging, "I'm Jake Tapper, and this is my network," according to a person on the receiving end of one of those Tapper calls. So does Tapper's behavior here, as reported, fit with what you know about Jake Tapper? 100%. 100%. And you ask anyone working in Washington, D.C., anybody in the media, this is the Jake Tapper who slips into your DMs, direct messages on Twitter or on X, and starts screaming at you via text about something that you may have said about him. I promise you, this is vintage Jake Tapper. Vintage Jake Tapper. Now, a lot of you may be thinking, Larry, why are you spending so much time on Jake Tapper? You're only helping his book sales. You're only feeding this thing with facts. Well, I'll tell you why. Because there are a couple of tidbits in this book that are worth noting and building on the notion that we were lied to as a country. And we should focus on that because it's a scandal. But there's one other reason. You're right. Me talking about this helps sell Jake Tapper's book. But you know what else it does? It helps sell my book. Because the American people know we were lied to. And so, of course, you have a question. You have a question for yourself. Do you want to hear one of the liars tell you all about the lies? Or do you want to hear me tell you about the shameless liars? Suddenly, my book is having a resurgence because of Jake Tapper and all the attention on this issue. And in fact, yesterday, this is a screenshot from the rankings in the politics and elections category on Amazon. And for a little while, we actually overtook Jake Tapper's book. So, of course, we're going to spend a little more time on it. Also, it's kind of newsworthy. And also, it gives us a chance to remind you that Jake Tapper is a horrible human being. All right, let's get right to, I'm not going to do an ad for my book because I just did. All right, let's get right to the next segment. So as Jake Tapper did his book tour yesterday, he had a sit down with Katie Couric, who knew she was still doing stuff, along with his co-author Alex Thompson. And a stunning revelation came out during this interview. It's in the book, and it has to do with one of the questions we've been asking for quite some time. Clearly, Joe Biden has mashed potato for brains. Clearly, we've all seen that Joe Biden couldn't possibly run for re-election. That's why he pulled himself out. So the question is, if he's incapable of making it through a speech or a television interview, if he's incapable of running for office, then clearly he's incapable of being president of the United States. So who's really running things in the White House? We've got a few answers to that question, and they're going to piss you off. Here's the first one.
How big a factor was the Hunter stuff?
I think it was considerable. I think Hunter was driving the decision making for the family in a way that people, he was almost like a chief of staff of the family.
Does that strike you as pretty bizarre?
It's bizarre because I think he is provably, demonstrably unethical, sleazy, and prone to horrible decisions. I mean,
Tell me how you really feel.
well, I mean, I'm just look at the record. I mean, after his brother died, he cheated on his wife with his brother's widow and then got her addicted to crack. That's just one thing I could say. I mean, I don't have a lot of personal regard for him, and just based on having nothing to do with, I barely have ever met him. I've met him like once or twice, but I knew Bo. Bo was a great, upstanding guy.
I knew him too. Really,
a real loss for the country too, not just for his family, for the country. But Hunter is not that, and the idea of, letting him drive the family car, as it were, is just really, really questionable.
So Hunter Biden was the de facto chief of staff, driving many of the decisions in the Biden White House. Chief of staff, Hunter Biden. By the way, hearing Jake Tapper come out against Hunter Biden raises a couple of issues. The first is that now we know that Hunter Biden and Jake Tapper have actually met quite a few times, including that time at the Super Bowl, Jake, when Hunter threatened to knock you out because you had called him as he was sitting by his brother Bo's bedside as he was about to die because you wanted an exclusive with him and the Biden family. They were kind of pissed off about that, weren't they? Why didn't you reveal that part of the story to Katie Couric just now? Oh, it's okay. We love you. You're pristine. You can do no wrong. You're Jake Tapper. Also, everything that he just said about Hunter Biden, completely fact-based, about dating his brother's widow and getting her addicted to crack and all of the drug use and all of the illegal stuff that he did. That's all true. Have you ever heard Jake Tapper saying that stuff on his show on CNN? We've talked about it, but we're vilified when we do that. How dare you? This is a troubled young man. And Joe Biden's protection of him is just because it's the regular love that a father would show his son. Talking like Hunter's, 7 years old when he's in his 50s. But boy, the standards change here when Jake Tapper needs to sell a book, don't they? So there's one idea. Who's running the White House? Chief of Staff Hunter crackhead felon Biden is running the White House. But then there's this. Journalist Mark Halperin on the Two-Way platform, Two-Way Tonight, last night. He had Ed Martin. Ed Martin had been the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia until squirrely nuts Tom Tillis decided to pull his support for him. But that's okay, because as you know, Donald Trump has now appointed him in a couple of key positions, including the weaponization of the Justice Department division at the DOJ. And he's also looking into pardons. He's the pardon attorney now in the Justice Department, which means he can scrutinize past pardons, Joe Biden's pardons, and also other activities that happened during the Biden White House, including the use of the auto pen. So, Ed Martin, what have you learned about what happened on Joe's bad days at the White House?
You were with us on the morning meeting. You talked at length at 2 stops before he went into the meeting with the House conference, talked to the media, and he talked a lot about this issue of the auto pen. All presidents use auto pen, but there seems to be a sense in the Trump administration that Joe Biden, and this is something Ed I think is working on, that Joe Biden used the auto, or people used the auto pen to sign things on Joe Biden's behalf, including pardons that may be not legally, constitutionally permissible if it wasn't actually the president and it was some robot or whatever you call the auto pen. So here's number 3. This is a Truth Social post from the president about this topic. And again, he talked about it at length this morning. Joe Biden was not for open borders. He never talked about open borders where criminals of all kinds, all right, blah, 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 go through the process. It was the people that knew he was cognitively impaired and took that, and that took over the auto pen. They stole the president's of the United States and put us in great danger. This is treason at the highest level. So Ed, where did this start, this notion that the auto pen was improperly used, and what evidence have you seen for the president's accusation?
Well, I'll make a little news for you, Mark, here. I was in the office as U.S. Attorney for about 5 days when I wrote to a number of senior Biden officials in the White House saying, what did you know about Joe Biden's competence and the pardons? And I got some responses. And so I've been looking at this for a while. Again, I think that the question is more about competence. If you have someone who's not competent, they can't enter into a contract, right? And if you do enter into a contract, you've committed fraud. The question is whether you use a tool to trick people into entering into a fraud. So the Biden pardons are unprecedented. The ones right before Christmas that he did, people forget this. I think it's a couple thousand pardons that were done. Did he know about that? Did he really understand? Look, the pardon power is plenary, but the guy has to be competent to do it. Now you come forward to this question broadly of the auto pen. Auto pen's completely obviously legal if you're competent, and there must be a trail that shows who was in charge of the auto pen. I know this exists. Like I worked for a governor. We had a system for an auto pen to be able to use it. And so right now we have unprecedented conduct, the pardons, unprecedented admissions, the books as well as the staffers. I had a whistleblower in my office 10 days ago, senior Democrat, saying, look, it was these three people that controlled access and they were making money off of it. I don't know if I believe it yet, but the point is, I think we have to get to the bottom of it for the American people and to protect the process. And that's what we're doing. And by the way, make it all the way to the bottom. It may not be criminal, but it certainly should be a scandal of the first order, maybe in human history or maybe American history. I sound like the president there, but in American history to have this kind of conduct.
Ed, I'm from Maryland, not North Carolina, so I'm not that bright. Did I miss what the news was? You said you'd make news. What was the news you made?
The news was that nobody knows until that I was writing to these folks at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and including the Biden family. I don't think anybody has seen that. So my point is, I'm bragging about being there early. Everybody got to this 120 days later.
Did they reply, or you just sent them letters?
No, they didn't.
What'd they say?
Well, a couple of them lawyered up, and one of them wrote directly. I won't talk about what they said.
And can you and you probably won't tell us, but can you characterize who the whistleblower was? It someone who worked in the Biden White House?
Biden campaign, 2020 campaign at the highest levels.
2020, and who are the three people they said were doing it for money?
This is the one who's let me say it carefully.
Yeah.
The gatekeepers. Different characterization of who was using the access, but the gatekeepers were Klain and Anita Dunn and Bob Bauer, and those three were really dominant characters in the White House. Ricchetti a little bit, and obviously Jill, but I think that was the three. I was with this person, and I said, "What about Susan Rice? What about some of these others?" And they said, "No, these were the ones."
Okay, all right. Now that is huge news. So there were three gatekeepers who controlled the use of the auto pen. Ron Klain, who was the chief of staff. Did you vote for Ron Klain? Did you elect Ron Klain to anything? No, but at least Ron Klain was a public figure that became a federal government employee, had to divest himself from any ownership of companies or investments or any other jobs. He was a public servant working as a chief of staff, right? What was that second name? Anita Dunn. Now, did you hear Mr. Martin there say that there was another whistleblower who said that there were people in the White House who were using the auto pen for pardons and other things, and they were making money off of it. Now, how is that possible? How do you make money off of it? Well, I'm going to speculate here, and it's just speculation, but that's my job as an analyst and as somebody who provides context and perspective on the news. You hear things like this and you start putting two and two together and you start to speculate on what could have happened. And because of the lack of transparency or anybody giving an honest answer to a question out of this Biden White House, all we're left is to speculate. So we know that Joe Biden had bad days and he couldn't make decisions. We know that the auto pen was used in an unprecedented way for pardons and other executive orders and legislation. And we know now from the former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia that a whistleblower has told him that Ron Klain and Anita Dunn were two of the people who controlled that auto pen. And what else do we know about Anita Dunn? Well, unlike Ron Klain, Anita Dunn was never actually a permanent employee of the U.S. government. Anita Dunn, who worked in the in the Obama administration, she was the one who had to leave under a cloud of shame and scandal because she gave a speech saying that one of her heroes was Mao Zedong, you know, the communist Marxist mass murderer. She's a radical leftist. Anita Dunn was brought into the Biden White House, but she was never given a permanent job. She was always employed under what's called a special government employee, like Elon Musk. Remember, Elon Musk was only able to keep his job for 120 days, and then he had to leave. Otherwise, if he stayed longer, he would have had to divest himself from all ownership of any company, from any job, from any salary, from any payroll, from any other investments even. That's what happens when you become a government employee. That's why the sacrifice is so great, when people give up everything they've got. Anita Dunn was a special government employee like that. That meant she could work in the White House, have access to the President of the United States and the machinations of the U.S. government at the executive branch at the highest possible level, and still keep her job on K Street, advising lawyers and lobbyists in Washington, D.C. She could still keep all of her investments, all her ownership, everything that she did to make money. Anita Dunn, we are told now, based on this report, also had access to the auto pen. I think that deserves some further scrutiny, doesn't it? All right, so who was running the White House? We've got Anita Dunn, we've got Ron Klain, we've got Hunter Biden, and then there's this, quickly, from the book itself, from Tapper's book. Many of Biden's own aides were also kept at arm's length from the president. Alumni of the Obama administration noticed the difference. Obama would hash it out with deputies and mid-level aides. Biden, by contrast, mostly met with the Politburo. The Politburo is this group, which is kind of funny that he uses Politburo since that's from the Soviet Union communist days. But it's basically a circle of 5 or more closest advisors who would make decisions as a committee in the Politburo. You'd always have a general secretary, of course. A meeting could easily be derailed and the aides would have to reconvene without the person who had triggered the president. They noted that they sometimes spent more time on strategizing how to present the decision to Biden than on the substance of the decision itself. In practice, Bruce Reed was the real domestic policy advisor. Mike Donilon was the actual political director. Steve Ricchetti controlled legislative affairs. Ron Klain controlled a bit of everything. Did you hear any of these? These are all names that were kept under the shadows, under cover. These were not secretaries. These were not cabinet members. These were not big high-profile people, but they, according to this book, made big decisions. And then here's a quote. Some felt that the insularity was the Politburo's way of protecting its influence. Quote, 5 people were running the country, and Joe Biden was at best a senior member of the board. They would make huge economic decisions without calling Treasury Secretary Yellen. 5 people were running the country. Joe Biden was at best a senior member of the board. And who those 5 people were still seems to be a little bit up in the air, but it appears to be Ron Klain, Anita Dunn, maybe Hunter sometimes, maybe Jill sometimes. And Joe Biden being a senior member of the board doesn't mean he's the head of the board. It doesn't mean he's the chairman of the board. It doesn't mean he has veto power. He's just, somebody as part of the group that runs the country that has a little more seniority, perhaps. This is the greatest political scandal in American history. And the scrutiny has just begun on this, and we will continue to follow it as well. But rest assured that for 4 years, while our men and women were in harm's way, while military catastrophes happened in Afghanistan and in the Middle East, as our economy was tanking and inflation was sky high, and as our borders were open and criminals and illegal immigrants were flooding our country to the tune of tens of millions, Hunter Biden was acting as a de facto chief of staff much of the time. So it all kind of makes sense, doesn't it? I'm not going to lie. When Marco Rubio was chosen as Secretary of State for Trump, I was cautious. I like Marco Rubio, don't get me wrong. I really thought Rick Grenell had all the experience to do it. He had been the ambassador to Germany. He had been affiliated with the UN for the entire 8 years of the Bush presidency. He worked in the Office of National Intelligence. He had a great track record, and I think he had the demeanor to do it. But Rubio got the job, and hey, let's go Rubio. Boy, was I wrong. Marco Rubio is a freaking stud. And yesterday, as if he hasn't been a stud enough, yesterday, in a Senate hearing, he absolutely kicked ass. And it begins with Senator Tim Kaine. You remember, Hillary's running mate.
The phrase says you are entitled to entrance as a refugee if you demonstrate a well-justified fear of persecution.
No,
I
you're
mean,
not entitled.
So
You're
can
allowed.
you have a different standard based upon the color of somebody's skin? Would that be acceptable?
Well, I'm not the one arguing that. Apparently, you are, because you don't
No,
like the fact that they're
I'm
white,
just
and that's why
asking
they're
you to
coming.
say that that would be unacceptable.
Well, no,
That
I would say that
seem
the
to be
United
a
States,
very easy
the
thing
United
to
States
say,
has a right to pick and choose who they allow into the United
even
States.
based on the color of somebody's skin.
No one's. You're the one that's talking about the color of their skin, not me. These
You're
are people whose
refusing to
farms were being
acknowledge
burned
that it
down and they
should
were
be
killed because of the
even-handed.
color of their skin.
Well,
Well, you've demonstrated enough because you think anyone should be allowed into this country for any reason because they met a certain
who
criteria.
has said that?
We are going to prioritize people that come into our country on the basis of what's in the interest of this country. That's a small number of people that are coming.
But
in
you
that
said
particular
you said
case.
this weekend that
But
there
in
would
other
be more.
cases, it's harder to vet. In other cases, it's more difficult. And by the way, the United States admits people every year. 1 million people come to this country every year legally. 1 million
And
people
now
a year come to this
there
country
is one
legally.
group
No
of
other
people
country
that
in the
have
world
an
is nearly as
easy
generous.
pass into this country. For the first time, this administration has said Afrikaners get an easy pass and refugee programs for the remainder of the world are shut off. And you can't say to the American public that we should apply this statute in an even-handed way.
No, I
I'm
think it should
shocked
be
at that,
applied in a
and I
way. No,
yield
well, you
back.
shouldn't be shocked. It should be applied in the national interest of the United States. Our immigration policy should be based on the national interest of the United States, period. End of story. If there is a subset of people that are easier to vet, who we have a better understanding of who they are and what they're going to do when they come here, they're going to receive preference, no doubt about it. There are a lot of sad stories around the world, millions and millions of people around the world. It's heartbreaking. We cannot assume millions and millions of people around the world. No country can. So you have to have a process of deciding who do you prioritize, who do you allow in. We do it all the time. We do it in our immigration system now under our current laws. Unfortunately, it's primarily based on family connection and not on what they're going to contribute to the society from a merit standpoint. That should be changed, but that'll require statutory changes. But the bottom line is this notion that somehow we have to accept anyone who wants to come to the United States is absurd. No country in the world has an immigration policy like that.
And no one is arguing that we should. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Actually, he was specifically arguing that because he kept saying that the policy toward the Afrikaners from South Africa should be applied even-handedly across the board, which means, okay, anybody from any other country should be able to come in. This is Tim Kaine trying to make Marco Rubio, Donald Trump, and you appear to be racist. Tim Kaine, obsessed with race and obsessed with the skin color of those individuals from South Africa who are being persecuted because of their skin color, is frankly no better than the racist government of South Africa, because he sees those refugees seeking asylum in this country as nothing more than people with white skin. That's all that matters to him. And Marco Rubio was having none of it. And he stood up for you, he stood up for his president, and he stood up for the policy and said, this is ridiculous. Tim Kaine says, well, if you're letting them in under these conditions, why don't you let anyone from any other country in under the same conditions? And Marco Rubio said, because we don't have to. We don't have to let anybody in under those conditions from any other country. The law doesn't say that we have to do that. And no country's immigration policy does it. We let people into this country based on what's in the best interest of our country. Well, there are people in the Congo who are being discriminated against some way. Oh, that's true. You're right. Now, ask yourself, is it easier to vet the people coming in from the Congo, whose government is a freaking basket case, or people coming in from South Africa, which, by the way, their government is not much better, but at least they have a track record of some record keeping, some documentation. People have, an easy way to clear to ensure that they're not terrorists. But Tim Kaine would have anyone from around the country come to this country, whether they can be vetted or not, whether they're terrorists or not. It doesn't matter, lest you be called racist. And Marco Rubio said, not just no, but no. We're done with that. That may have worked back in 2009 or maybe even 10 years ago when Obama was still president and everybody had their hair on fire over anything that had to do with skin color. But we're done with that. We don't play that game anymore. You can't play that race card and use it as a trump card anymore because we see through it. We know what you're doing and we're done with it. You're just letting them in because they're white. Mitt Romney's response, that's not true. I'll let anybody in. It's okay. But please don't point out the fact that these people are white. Not anymore. Marco Rubio, God bless you, man, for standing up and saying, you want to be obsessed with skin color? You go ahead, Tim Kaine. There's a name for people who are obsessed with skin color, but not me. I'm actually looking at these individuals based on the merit of what's happening to them in their country, what they bring to our country, and whether we can properly, securely vet them properly in a sane, rational, intelligent way. That's what a country's supposed to do. And we will not be intimidated by your race baiting, Tim Kaine. God, that was glorious. And that wasn't even Marco Rubio's best moment. Take a look at this. Chris Van Hollen, Maryland man, you know, you last saw him having margaritas with an MS-13 gang member down in El Salvador, and he just can't quit that storyline. He's trying to salvage whatever's left of his political career every single day. He spent 7 minutes. Each senator had 7 minutes with Marco Rubio. He spent all 7 minutes attacking Rubio on immigration policy and his dealings with Venezuela, MS-13, and also a little bit about some foreign programs that got cut because USAID was actually just a slush fund for radical, woke, left-wing Democrats. And he finished his remark with this.
I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
May I respond?
You may say.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job based on what I know.
Well, that's
about
just
your
a
record
flippant
and what you
statement,
stand
Mr.
for.
Secretary.
And
That is just so gloriously beautiful. Again, why did I doubt Marco Rubio? Let me just tell you something, Senator. If you approved of the job I was doing as Secretary of State, that's a red flag for me. The fact that you regret your vote tells me that I am right over the target. Oh, what a glorious moment. And then, of course, now Van Hollen, how dare you? How dare you, sir? But, of course, Van Hollen's time is up. So now we get to bicker back and forth about whether Marco Rubio gets to respond without further interruption from the good senator who used all of his time for his monologue. It's great. Watch.
I respond, Mr. Chairman?
You
Mr.
may.
Chairman, I didn't
Okay.
ask
Senator,
question.
please let the secretary have
I'd be
the floor.
happy to, but then I can respond to his.
Your time's
response.
up, Senator, and willfully used, I might add.
Well-
Your remarks do not represent the view of this committee.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Secretary, please.
Well, I'd like to. I can't respond to everything he said because much of these are untrue, but I'll go through a few. First of all, I'm actually very proud of the work we've done with USAID. For example, I don't regret cutting $10 million for male circumcisions in Mozambique. I don't know how that makes us stronger and more prosperous as a nation.
I raised
don't
Sudan,
regret
Mr.
psychosocial support services.
I
for
raised
USAID.
Sudan, Mr. Secretary.
Can I
not
respond,
Mozambique.
Mr. Chairman, or do I?
Senator, I'd ask you to suspend. You had 7 straight minutes of
I chose to
railing on-
use my time that way, Mr. Chairman. That's my right to
Please
use my time
suspend
that way.
Secretary Rubio.
Well, I can go on. I mean, there's other things here. We spent $227,000 for Big Cat's YouTube channel from USAID. We spent $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, whatever the hell that means. So I can go on and on. I got the list here, and there's more. I didn't even bring the whole list. In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear in the days to come.
Mr.
You're going to see
Chairman,
who you went to
look,
defend.
I'm sorry,
please,
Mr. Chairman.
Secretary
No.
Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated comments
Senator,
like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor. You had
Secretary
your time.
Rubio should take that testimony to the federal court of the
Senator,
United States because
well,
he hasn't done it under oath.
I love that Chris Van Hollen. He's like, how dare you? I did not have margaritas with him. The margaritas were just placed on the table while I was talking with the wife-beating human trafficker, MS-13 gang member, but I did not sip from that margarita. That's the best he's got. And he's just outraged. His face gets red with veins bulging. That's like, you've crossed a line. It's just, I love that they don't even need to be beclowned because they beclown themselves. All Rubio has to do is point out the truth, but I love that that makes him lose it. Honestly, every time Chris Van Hollen makes a campaign appearance with his next election, somebody should be trolling him with a big like margarita truck, blasting Jimmy Buffett through the speakers just to piss him off. All right, there's more. This is great stuff from Rubio.
Here's another point, okay? There is a division in our government between the federal branch and the judicial branch. No judge in the judicial branch cannot tell me or the president how to conduct foreign policy. No judge can tell me how I have to outreach to a foreign partner or what I need to say to them. And if I do reach to that foreign partner and talk to them, I have under no obligation to share that with the judiciary branch. Just like a judge cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister of Russia, they cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister or the president of El Salvador. And if I did negotiate with them, which we have responded to them, and we've told them, we've had communications with the president of El Salvador, I am under no obligation under our division of powers in this country and to share with the judicial branch how I conducted diplomacy of the United States. It would actually be counterproductive. If I started sharing with courts, or frankly, with the media, my conversations with foreign leaders and all of their details, no foreign leader would talk to me again, and we would break trust with them. So I have complied with every court order. What I won't comply with is an order to disclose what I'm saying and what we're talking about with a foreign leader, because then they won't talk to me. Diplomacy doesn't work that way. About the student visas, let me say this. I don't deport anybody, and I don't snatch anybody. The State Department does not have officers in the street snatching everybody. What I do is revoke visas, and it's very simple. A visa is not a right. It is a privilege. People apply for student visas to come into the United States and study. And if you tell me that you're coming to the United States to lead campus crusades, to take over libraries and try to burn down buildings and acts of violence, we're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what Ms. Ozturk did?
We're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what she did? Come on, Mr. Secretary.
And every single
You're
one of
just
these
blowing
cases, the
smoke
factors
here
are
now.
different.
Senator,
The bottom line is, if you're
Senator,
coming here to stir up trouble on our campuses, we will deny you a visa. And if you
Does
have
the
a
First
visa
Amendment
and we find
apply
you,
to
we will
people
revoke
living
it.
in the United
And
States?
we're going to do more. There are more coming. We're going to continue to revoke the visas of people who are here as guests and are disrupting our higher education facilities. People are paying money. These kids pay money to go to school, and they have to walk through a
Writing an
bunch of
op-ed
lunatics
to the
who are
tough
here on student
newspapers
visas.
disrupting the
Simple
foreign
as
policy of the United
I want to
States.
do more. I hope we can
That's
find more of these people.
pathetic, Mr.
In fact, the other day, some guys led a riot. I forgot what university it was. And I asked, please, can you find the arrest records of all the people that were arrested at that riot at that campus? Because if any of them have a visa, we're going to revoke
I
it.
feel so much safer
All right,
when you lock
let's,
up people like Ms. Ozturk, Mr. Secretary.
We've had enough time on the subject. Thank you very much.
How great was that? Rubio versus Van Hollen. I want Marco Rubio to move to Maryland just to run against Van Hollen, but that would be kind of a step down. He's already been in the Senate. I think he's in line for higher office at this point. Democrats cannot stop themselves. They want to die on this hill. They want to die on the hill of protecting criminal, illegal immigrants who are in this country, caring about their so-called due process rights, and add to the list of people who are in this country as our guests on student visas who violate the terms of their student visa. He wants to protect them. Democrats want to protect those people who come from other countries, bring their politics and values to our universities that are funded by our government, and then protest and try to shut down that university because of their radical ideas. Chris Van Hollen and his party, they want to defend them. Marco Rubio just defended common sense, the rule of law, and your vote for the Trump presidency. One other quick thing here. Love seeing Tammy Bruce and her expressions right behind her shoulder. Look at Tammy Bruce. She's the chief spokesperson for the Secretary of State now. And it was very cool to see her reacting during all of that. I like Tammy a lot. Listen, that what you just saw, if any of Marco Rubio's testimony yesterday got any attention, it was that stuff because of the fireworks. And that's good. And if you missed it, I'm glad we could share it with you. But I'm really glad I can share one more thing with you that didn't get as much attention. I still think one of the biggest scandals uncovered thanks to Elon Musk and Doge during the Trump presidency so far has been USAID. This is this slush fund that Democrats were able to employ and use for garbage all around the world. And much of the programs that the Democrat slush fund with your tax dollars was utilized for was eventually turned back around against American citizens with regard to censorship, blocking of ads on conservative websites. A lot of these NGOs ended up actually funneling money back into the United States, and they were used against us. A huge scandal that deserves more attention. And one part of Marco Rubio's testimony yesterday focused on some of the things that he found now that he's in charge of USAID and it's been dismantled. Watch this.
I will say this, even with the reforms we put in place and what we're suggesting is changes to our foreign aid, we still will provide more foreign aid, more humanitarian support than the next 10 countries combined, than the entire OECD, and far more than China. China doesn't do humanitarian aid.
We'll get into China in a second, but did you hear what he just said? Because everyone's like saying, oh, we used to do all of these foreign grants and foreign diplomacy, and we used our money and our influence, and now everyone in the world is going to hate us. Even with the cuts they've made and the reforms, we are still providing more assistance to foreign countries than the other top 10 countries combined. So cry me a freaking river. We do plenty for foreign nations. Plenty. If we should do anything at all. But then The question is, but look at what China does. China has all of this influence and they have all of these relationships around the world, and we're losing track. And they're, well, first of all, what China's doing is borderline colonization. If we did what China does, trust me, we'd have protests at our universities saying that we're colonizers. Okay? That's number one. But number two, Rubio lays bare exactly how China operates on the foreign stage.
China does predatory lending. That's what Belt and Road Initiative is. That's what all of their aid. They have zero record of doing humanitarian aid in the world. And frankly, they don't know how to do it. They have no interest in doing it. What they're very good at is going into some country, making you a loan, and then holding that debt over your head. And that's what they continue doing. By the way, you have to hire a Chinese company to do it. So I don't agree with this assessment that there's no evidence whatsoever that China has either the capacity or the will to replace the U.S. in humanitarian assistance, in food deliveries, or in developmental assistance for that matter. We provide development assistance. They provide debt traps. And that's a point over and over again around the world that we've made, and we found receptive audiences to it. Now, look, anytime you undertake reforms of this magnitude that needed to be made, you're going to have hiccups and you're also going to have controversy. But these reforms had to happen. At USAID, 12 cents of every dollar was reaching the recipient. That means that in order for us to get aid to somebody, we had to spend all this other money supporting this foreign aid industrial complex.
Did you catch that? We're going to watch it one more time. It's very short, but this should be the blaring headline across all of cable news, across every website. Did you catch this?
We're also going to have controversy, but these reforms had to happen. At USAID, 12 cents of every dollar was reaching the recipient. That means that in order for us to get aid to somebody, we had to spend all this other money supporting this foreign aid industrial complex.
So when they say that children are going to be starving in Sudan and that old widows are going to go hungry in Eastern Europe or in Southeast Asia because USAID has been dismantled, just understand something. For every dollar, your dollars, for every one of your American tax dollars that was spent on one of these programs, forget about the ones that were garbage, Sesame Street in Iraq and circumcisions in Mozambique. What about the very small handful of actual foreign aid programs that maybe did help a starving child in Sudan or Ethiopia? For every dollar of yours that was spent, only 12 cents made it to that kid in Ethiopia. Only 12 cents went to that village that needs infrastructure in Southeast Asia. The other 88 cents went to the permanent political NGO infrastructure class, the beast, the Leviathan. 88 cents from every dollar went to feed the pencil pushers and the do-gooders. They're the people who go and protest in Washington, D.C. when Elon Musk takes a chainsaw out of this garbage. It wasn't actually doing anything. That's the scandal. That's what's going on in this government. And that's what continues to be the problem and needs to be fixed. We're just scratching the surface on this. But my God, what a day for Marco Rubio yesterday in the Senate. Well done, Mr. Secretary of State. Now, as you know, we think that James Comey is a big old buffoon. We think he's a weasel. We think he's a liar. We think that he's a criminal. We think that he actually wielded his role as FBI director in such a way to create political terror in this country against innocent Americans who are only guilty of not agreeing with James Comey politically. We can all have disagreements about things like that. But one thing we should all be able to agree with, the dude is weird. Weird as after his little Jimmy sells seashells by the seashore stunt that got him a whole lot of attention for seemingly sending a cryptic threat to the president of the United States that he now claims ignorance for, he now immediately pivots and goes on a book tour. Of course he does. So he was in Washington, D.C. He was signing books at a bookstore. I think it was Politics and Prose, left-wing bookstore, of course. And his screaming throngs of old ladies were there to get an autograph. And so was Jesse Waters' producer. This is a beautiful troll. Take a look what happened when Jesse's producer showed up to get his book signed by Jimmy Comey.
We wanted answers from Comey, so we sent Johnny to investigate the investigator.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, it's great to meet you. Hello. Director Comey, yeah. How are you? Good, thank you. Jesse Waters from Fox has a question. Yeah. Why do you want an 86 Trump? All right. Director? I'm not taking questions like that now. But why would you just sign the book? Why would you post that? Director Comey, how was your interview with the Secret Service? You want the book signed, really? Absolutely. Okay, you got it, bud. Can you sign my seashell too? Which beach is this that you're going to? You find a Kamala seashell, 8647. This is a politically charged beach, Director. They will. The seashell? You want to sign it? Have a nice. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night. Have a good night. Thank you. Good night.
He didn't want to sign the seashell. That's sad. Come on, have a sense of humor, Jim. That was beautiful. Everything about this was beautiful, in a really ugly way and awkward. Look at the moment when Jim Comey realizes who this guy is. And why do you want an 86 Trump? See, I want James Comey to feel awkward. I want him to feel uncomfortable. Because he did that to a lot of innocent people. But not with some camera and some sort of trolling, goofy questions from a producer. No, he used the rule of law to make people very, very uncomfortable. He terrified people. He trapped people. He destroyed people's lives. So the very least that I can take pleasure in is this buffoon having an awkward 60 seconds with Jesse Waters, producer. He's having a good day, isn't he? Jim, you had work done? I think he's had work done. I liked the move, by the way, when he reaches into the pocket. It's like, what's he reaching into his pocket for? Johnny, what you got in your pocket? Will you sign my seashell? Also, did you notice the dude acting as a bodyguard for James Comey? What's going on there? You would think the former director of the FBI could do better. But I guess maybe Trump sort of withdrew his Secret Service detail now. So he's got to hire Chad. Or is it Jordan? Caleb? Nah, needs to be more androgynous. Is that a dude? I mean, honestly, I don't want to get in trouble for misgendering somebody. There is facial hair, but, you know, these days, especially in James Comey's circle. What's going on with the ear? I'm hoping that that's just like an employee at the bookstore who was doing like crowd control. But still, yikes. By the way, about the book that Jimmy Comey is peddling, it's amazing. If you read the synopsis of this book, considering the circumstances that put James Comey back in the news cycle again, you know, the seashells perfectly placed that say 8647. And, my wife thought that I should post that on Instagram. So, of course, I did, because that's a real good lesson, dear boys and girls. If you see something out there and you have no idea what it means, go ahead and post it on social media and see what happens. There will be no negative repercussions. No, that's a fine use of social media. So he gets all this attention and he acts innocent. I had no idea what that message meant. And I had no idea. I was just taking a walk with my wife on the beach. But now when you read the synopsis of the book, maybe you have a better idea of exactly what Comey was up to. Former FBI Director Comey reunites the protagonists of his first two legal thrillers. Hold on. This guy is the former director of the FBI, and his post-FBI career is to write 3 crime thriller novels. I mean, listen, I just wrote a thriller too. I have a new book out. It's coming out next week. But I'm not the former director of the FBI. I mean, I would think that if he really had books in him, you know, it wouldn't be some sort of criminal fantasy story. That's just weird, isn't it? Everything about this guy is weird. The fact that he was the director of the FBI is remarkable and disturbing. But sure, his strongest outing yet, his third crime thriller novel, U.S. Attorney Carmen Garcia is trying to take down Samuel Buchanan, a far-right media personality with a popular podcast vilifying those he thinks are destroying America. Oh, but he executed his job as director of the FBI in a completely non-political, non-partisan, unbiased way. Everybody was equal under the law. Justice is blind. But then when he gets the chance to write a book, the plot line has to do with a far-right media personality with a popular podcast who vilifies those he thinks are destroying America. That's shocking, isn't it? Just a random idea that he had. He doesn't know where it came from. And who does he think are destroying America? Intellectuals, immigrants, and people of color. So he's a Neanderthal-thinking, xenophobic racist. That's the bad guy, the enemy, in James Comey's fever dream novel. Are you connecting the dots here? All right, let's continue. Garcia believes Buchanan went far beyond the protection of the First Amendment when he singled out his enemies by name and suggested, quote, something should be done about them. Oh, you mean like they should be 86th, Jim? Is that what you mean? Is that what he said? Someone should 86 these people. Oh, no. That's not a threat. We have no idea what that means. You see what he did here? Do you see? His fans have obliged, killing or grievously injuring some of his foes. In a series of tense and exhilarating courtroom scenes, there's nothing more exhilarating than a courtroom scene written by the former director of the FBI. By my book. Garcia works with Deputy U.S. Attorney Nora Carlton to bring Buchanan down. Then, just as they've convicted him, a new threat emerges. Some of his followers have planned an act of terror at an upcoming UN convention. Okay, so we've got a racist, xenophobic, Neanderthal-thinking, blockhead, anti-intellectual, far-right-wing commentator podcaster who inspires his listeners to murder all of his political enemies. And now, just as he's getting convicted, they're terrorists and they're going to blow up the UN. But James Comey does not have any personal political bias against conservatives or Republicans. Hell, he's a Republican himself, don't you know? Just ask him. He's the media's favorite kind of Republican, the kind that votes Democrat. Comey's ripped from the headlines plot. Wait a second. What headlines have been ripped for this plot? What? This is a ripped from the headlines plot, because haven't we seen headline after headline about crazed lunatic people who listen to right-wing podcasts go murdering people in cold blood and plotting to blow up the UN? Oh, no, wait. Those headlines are actually about people who watch MSNBC and murder Republican congressmen on a baseball diamond in Virginia, or take over downtown Portland dressed up like Antifa jerks. Those are the actual headlines, guys. So I don't know who's publishing this book or who wrote this blurb about how James Comey's left-wing fantasy about right-wing hate-mongering murderers and terrorists is ripped from the headlines, but there are literally zero headlines to support this fever dream of James Comey's. God, they're despicable people. Comey's ripped from the headlines plot, which, with its focus on Nora's hand-wringing about following legal and constitutional protocol, is easy to read as a bit of self-reflection, never loses steam. This proves that Comey, the crime novelist, is here to stay. Oh, thank God. I was concerned that Comey wasn't here to stay. I really don't like James Comey. I could do an entire podcast where I could have a daily storyline about everything that James Comey did that is what's wrong with America and what's wrong with how he and the permanent political class in Washington, D.C. used the government and the Justice Department as a weapon against everyday, ordinary Americans. I could do that, and I could keep going on and on. I'm going to stop because there's one more person who would like to have the last word about James Comey. And so I would like to defer to the gentleman from Louisiana. Senator Kennedy, please wrap this up. What do you think of James Comey?
One other topic of conversation today is, of course, that tweet from the former FBI director, James Comey, now deleted, showing the numbers 8647 in the sand. Do you think that was an appropriate thing for James Comey to put on social media?
No. Look, you can only be young once, but you can always be immature. I know Mr. Comey pretty well. He's been on a lot of Senate committees. He's very self-assured. As Lyndon Johnson used to say, he can strut sitting down. He's got a chip on his shoulder. In fact, the chip on his shoulder has a chip on its shoulder. He, as an FBI director, he interfered not just in one presidential campaign, he interfered in two. He tried to screw both Trump and Hillary Clinton. People have forgotten that what he tried to do to Secretary Clinton.
I covered that.
Yeah, I mean, he a good argument can be made he cost her the election. You know, I don't have a lot of sympathy for him. I'm not saying that, I don't know what his intent was, but it was bone deep down to the marrow stupid, and I don't feel sorry for him.
Yeah, I think that probably wraps things up on this James Comey segment. Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. And whatever you do, please, I beg you, don't buy James Comey's book, and recommend that action to all of your friends. Friends, don't let friends read Comey. Let's get to your super chats, shall we? Let's take a quick. We got one more segment coming up, by the way, about AI, but I didn't want to wait too long to get to your super chats. Jeffrey, Ball State alum, $10. Tapper is taking the punches to hawk his book. Hooters, Spock's boy, gotta eat. Yeah, you know, honestly, I mean, people say I'm shameless when it comes to selling my book, which, by the way, you all really should buy my book, Shameless Liars, How Trump Defeated the Legacy Media and Made Them Irrelevant. That said, I bow down to Tapper's humiliating debasement techniques to sell as many of those books as possible. I hope it's worth it, dude, because I really don't think he can recover from this. Because think about it. We all hate him, always will. But the people who hate Trump, the people who love Biden, you know, the people who watch his show, they're mad at him for writing this too. Who's going to be left? Seriously. Thank you, Ball State alum, for the $10 super chat. That's very kind of you. I appreciate it. Angela with a $5 super chat. We're so blessed to have a president with common sense instead of one with a head full of egg drop soup. See, I say mashed potatoes, but egg drop soup is undeniably hilarious. Thank you, Angela. And another Angela, $2 super chat. Did crackhead Hunter pardon himself? You know, could very well be. It's an auto pen. It was in the final days. Biden promised he wouldn't do it, and I'm sure he wouldn't go back on a promise. So somebody else it could have very well been Hunter himself. Angela, it deserves an investigation, though, doesn't it? Like a special prosecutor kind of investigation. Angela, $2 super chat. Rubio House hearing today was even better. Oh, I can't wait to check out those videos. I've been busy here in studio with this show. Angela, $2 super chat. Prayers for the family of Jerry Connolly, Congresswoman from Northern Virginia, passed away during my show this morning on WMAL, and we made that announcement at 8:30. Yeah, a long-serving congressman in Northern Virginia. Thank you, Angela, for those prayers. Absolutely. Angela, $2 super chat. Not Comey trash. Do you know a book worth reading? I do. In fact, not only do I know my book, Shameless Liars, but this is a great time to let you know about my upcoming book. Oh, no, that's Schlichter's book. Oh, what have I done? Here, this one. Doe Squad, The Corruption Protocol. It's a thriller. It's cool. It's fun. It's a novella. And it's all about, well, I'll tell you. What begins as a routine investigation into a suspicious contract soon reveals a deeper, more insidious network, one that doesn't just siphon taxpayer dollars, but manipulates information, identity, and influence at a national scale. Each thread the squad pulls leads further into a labyrinth of front companies, encrypted files, and players too powerful to name. My book really is ripped from the headlines, Angela. So it's on pre-order now on Kindle, and the paperback and hardcover will be out next week. That's right. I wrote another book. Ball State alum with the $10 super chat. James, I comb my hair with buttered toast. Comey hawking a book. I comb my hair with buttered toast. I like that imagery, even though I don't know what it means. All right. Thank you for all the super chats. We appreciate it.
One more, Larry.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I saw that. $5 super chat from our buddy Arthur Brogdon over at Rumble, because for some reason we can't get those transferred over here to our platform. Jake Tapper, The Emperor's New Clothes, blinded him for 5 GD years. Pathetic, period. Hard stop. That's right. That's right. He deserves none of your sympathy or grace or praise. My hunch is that any good reporting in this book with any revelations actually came from Alex Thompson, but the only way he could get the book done was if Jake Tapper lent his name to it. And I guess it worked. Well, everybody knows that AI is super, super valuable, because without it, where would we get those little baby videos of the Pope or Joe Rogan interviewing Elon Musk? The baby videos are cool, right? And we know that you can use it to write a column. I'm pretty sure Kurt Schlichter over on Town Hall basically uses ChatGPT with the same headline every other week. He's my friend. I can make fun of him if I want to. But did you know that AI is actually the next frontier in our national security conversation? If you didn't, you need to, because our adversaries around the world are already ahead of the game. So joining us right now to discuss that and what we need to know about this critically important topic is Eli Bayraktari. He's the president of Special Competitive Studies Project. Now, this is a nonprofit organization, and their mission is to make recommendations to strengthen our long-term competitiveness as AI and other emerging technologies are reshaping our national security, our economy, our society, everything. And most importantly, in the DC area, Washington, DC, on June 2nd through June 4th, they are hosting the AI Plus Expo. It's the biggest expo of its kind, and everyone and everything in this realm are going to be right here in the nation's capital on this critically important issue. So we want to talk about the expo, we talk about the topics and all of these things that affect our country. Eli, thank you for joining us, because I want to know about it and I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Thanks for being
here. Larry, it's really an honor to be on your show.
But so first of all, I may have even just mangled the intro in terms of AI and how it relates to our national security. Is this just a question of like cybersecurity and cyber warfare? I mean, how far-reaching is AI technology in the realm of national security? What should we be concerned about?
So, Larry, I mean, when you see the potential of AI, and AI is also called a general-purpose technology, meaning, there are only a handful of technologies that fall under that category. For example, electricity or everything else, internet, for example, that came out like 20, 30 years ago. When you see the impact that this kind of a technology will have on our society, on our economy, on our economic prosperity, ultimately it'll be reflective on the national power and the national security. And so that's one piece about the AI, because if you just look at what has happened since the release of the ChatGPT in 2022, you have had an explosion in terms of like new companies, new models. Every new model is more powerful, more transformative. People are using it every day. So obviously, you are at the beginning of a new age, we call it the age of AI, where I think our entire society will be organized around this new technology, similarly to how our societies were organized around electricity or internet and, anything else we have seen in our history. But the challenge we have there is we're not the only actor in this space. Our main competitor, China, is a high-tech nation, and they have, more students than we do in this space. They are putting enormous resources in this space. They have incredible models, as witnessed by the release of DeepSeek a couple of months ago. And so this is going to be a continuously dynamic competition between us and China. And obviously, to your point, what's at stake here? Whoever wins this competition will probably set the foundation for the rest of the century of how our economies and our societies will be organized. Obviously, we don't want to live in a world in which China dominates this technology, because then you'll see the rest of the world adopting the technology built by the Chinese companies. So that's what's at stake here, Larry. I believe, and I think our organization, SCSP, believes that this decade will really set the foundation for how the rest of the century will unfold. And I believe personally, as an immigrant, that these will be, and this should be, American values, American companies dominating this space.
Ely, when you say that, when you talk about domination of this space and that China is making huge investments to dominate this space, what does that look like exactly? How do you know when someone has dominated this space?
Yeah, I mean, no, Larry, this is a really good question. But a lot of people were focused in January when a Chinese company released DeepSeek model, right? Yeah. And people call it, oh, this is a new like Sputnik moment. China has a cheaper, better model than all our companies. But from us that we have followed this space for many, many years, this is one more episode in another technology that China was trying to get ahead. If you look back in 2017 and 18, we lost the 5G competition. We were not organized for the next generation of telecom infrastructure. China doubled down on Huawei, and they deployed it globally. They subsidized it, and then we just suddenly woke up. And when you look at the 5G global infrastructure today, which means how are people communicating, most of the world looks red. Apart from us, Australia, the Brits, most of the world uses 5G Chinese infrastructure. And I don't think that's good. I don't think it's good for us. I don't think it's good for our allies and partners. And so that was the first probably eye-opening episode in which Chinese really rushed, deployed, and sort of like got ahead in this. Ever since 2017 and 18 later, we have had these episodes time and again. You had a hypersonic launch that caught our military by surprise. They crushed our solar panel companies. We had incredible companies, but they just went in, subsidized the domestic producers, and then they crushed American companies.
Yeah.
You have the DeepSeek moment with AI. You have 5G, as I mentioned. So they are in this competition. They have a strategy. They're focused. They know that these technologies will set the foundation for the future, and they're doubling down and they're deploying them. So when you ask me, like, what does it mean? It means that by the end of this decade, we can easily wake up and everything you do in your digital life, which is primarily what we do every day now, is built, used, circulated, transmitted through Beijing. And I don't think we want to live in that world in which everything we do, our data, our privacy, is by somehow monitored through, Chinese Communist Party.
Now, Ely, since you've sort of framed the conversation in a they-we situation, they are a communist government. They have a centralized economy where if their companies start to do something, it's because they've got a direct relationship with, if not complete control, by the central government and the military, for that matter. We don't operate that way over on our side of the equation. We've got separate companies in a free market society who are competing in their own right. Is that the right model for us? Do we need to have the government actually be the main player in this? I mean, how do we compete considering the different economic and manufacturing and R&D type paradigms our two nations have?
Yeah. So Larry, to your point, I think, good question. I think we will never be China, and nor we should be, right?
We don't want to be.
Yeah, exactly. We have a very vibrant private sector. Thankfully, our models and our competitors are still leading the AI space. But what we have argued, because we are in Washington for many, many years now, is that we need to be organized for this competition. For many, many years, we just let the competition with China viewed only from like economic perspective. And we have argued that this is not just about which company is better in 5G or AI or solar panels or quantum, because ultimately, whichever nation or country sets the foundation and rules of the road, most of the world will follow and use those technologies. So we have argued that our government has to step in. We have to find a better public-private model. And I think, to your intro, That's the purpose of our expo. Why we're bringing more than 160 exhibitors in Washington, D.C. at the convention center this June 2nd through 4th is so we can foster and nurture that public-private partnership, because that's how America wins. We win through better, public-private model where our private sector companies are working hand in hand with government to really stay ahead in this technology competition.
For those of you who are just joining us, we're speaking with Eli Barakhtari. He's the president of the Special Competitive Studies Project. He just mentioned Expo coming up here in Washington, D.C., June 2nd to 4th. It's the AI Plus Expo, and I have some specific questions about that event in a sec. But I do want to just pull a little bit more on where we stand right now and where we need to be. You've held positions in the Pentagon. You've held positions in the with the National Security Advisor. In the National Security Council, and recently, by the way, so you have a good understanding of what conversations are happening in this arena. What's keeping those guys up at night? What are they watching right now overseas from our adversaries that they're already feeling like we need to do better?
Yeah, I mean, Larry, that's a good point, because I think when going back to my opening line, AI is going to be a transformative technology. We're seeing it. We're seeing probably the early indications of how this is going to transform our society, our education, our healthcare, ultimately the economy. If you look at our stock market, the top 5 companies trading in the stock market are tech companies, right? Yeah. So we are a tech-based economy now, right? But this is not going to stop only in the economic domain. This is going to have, a spillover effect in the military operations, because whichever military adopts faster AI for military operations, that military will continue to dominate, in the national security space. If you look backwards,
can I just stop it? So when you say that in the military space, is that for like weapons development, for better targeting and practices? Are we replacing man-driven or human-driven weapon systems with AI-driven weapon systems? Is it all of the above?
Well, I think all of the above.
It sounds like science fiction,
No, I know, but like if you look at the microcosm of the future warfare, it's happening in Ukraine right now, to be honest with you. If you look at how they have adopted, the equipment, how they have adopted, drones and AI systems to better understand what Russians are doing, where are they moving, targeting them. I think that gives you a glimpse of how the future warfare is going to happen. And it's primarily happening across 3 domains. Number 1 is human machine teaming. You mentioned, are these systems going to replace humans? I don't think so in the foreseeable future, because we have laws and regulations and ethical considerations on our end. That's why we're a democracy. And so, but I think it's going to be more of a human machine teaming where, one person controls many capabilities, many drones. He can see much more in advance. He can protect him. But like the purpose of this is really not to send humans in the battle area. Is that if you can have cheap drones that you can send forward, but the humans stay behind, that they control the battlefield, that would be better for us, I think, and for our country and our military, right? You'll have better situational awareness.
Sure.
You can predict your enemy's movement, which I think a lot of these systems right now, AI is a predictive tool, right? So we have so many companies on our side that can do a prediction of where the Russian troops are moving, where the Chinese, systems are moving around Taiwan. So AI will increase the speed and scale probably of the military operations. And I think those will be the implications of us, trying to understand these systems early on, knowing how to employ them, knowing what the adversary is doing with them, obviously, so you can counter your adversarial, capabilities. But these things are going to fundamentally change the battlefield. Same as the tanks changed, radios, airplanes, and everything else we have seen since the end of the World War II.
Amazing. All right. So now let's get to the expo, because a part of this obviously is a national security concern, or security concern in general here for our country. But there's another side to this too. If I'm a young man or a young woman and I'm at university right now and I'm a math or computer science major or physics, that sort of thing, and I'm looking at where my career is going, I would think I would want to go to this expo. I would think there is going to be a huge investment in this technology, and there's going to be a great number of careers opening them up. Am I wrong? Is that who you want to attract to this expo?
So, Larry, I think that is one of the audiences we were trying to attract. When we started thinking about the expo last year, when we did the first one, we thought what makes our nation great. And what makes our nation great is really the public-private partnership. But the challenge you have is that you have the West Coast and East Coast, in which, you know, these are the technological hubs centered around Silicon Valley and Boston. Technology doesn't reside in Washington. In Washington, you only have federal government. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to bring technology companies to Washington, because if Washington is about to write policies, you know, that drive our nation into the future, you need some kind of a dynamic there that we understand what's going on in the private sector. So that's how we did the first expo last year. We were surprised by the reception. We had more than 10,000 people. We had more than 150 exhibitors. 50% of those exhibitors were private sector companies across the entire technology stack, not just AI. We had quantum, we had fusion energy, we had biotech companies. Less than 30% were government agencies, people that showed up, that they wanted to engage with private sector. They wanted to hire people on the spot for the jobs of the future. And then the rest were academic institutions and allies and partners. Yeah. So we really created a community of what I believe is going to determine the future of our country, which is, you know, if this technology is really now the foundation of how everything is going to build forward, the jobs of the future, then I think the expo is the place to be, because we have more than 300 speakers, 35 events. You can build your own programming. You can build your own like path in our expo. If you're a quantum person, you can enjoy all the conversation around quantum, and you might end up looking for a job and maybe find a good company that hires on the quantum side. And so it's an incredible event at the convention center, which is the biggest venue, as you know, Larry, in DC.
Yeah.
We're really excited about this year's because it's bigger, it's 3 days, and we have a lot of things going on there.
So what? And I am not a math major, nor computer science, or actually my son is right now at university, but I am not. What is the public's role? Just a regular schmo like me, you know, I now have broken down that initial barrier, and I can use the consumer-based ChatGPT or Grok AI product. So I have a very rudimentary understanding of the power there and what's involved. What is our role now in shaping this conversation?
Yeah. I mean, look, as I said at the beginning, if this is that once-in-a-generation technology, then this needs to be taught in schools early on. People need to know the risks and benefits of AI, because otherwise, this is just not another technology that you have an extra app on your phone.
Yeah.
You know, our educational system will be built or rebuilt around this technology. Our healthcare will be built around this technology, and ultimately our economy and national security. Because look, the favorite story I have, Larry, is at the beginning of last century, we had candle lighters in the streets of New York. People that would go every night and turn on the candles so, you know, the streets will be light. Once the electricity was invented, that profession went away within 5 years, and the union went away within 7 years.
Yeah.
That is the phase we are right now with AI. Many jobs will be lost, but we need to be mindful and be careful that we need to retrain and reskill our labor for the future.
Yeah,
I
that's a
have
great
to tell you this, but China is doing this.
I'm not that old, but my grandparents would talk about getting deliveries of blocks of ice for their icebox before refrigerators, and that's not that long ago. It's a great example, and I appreciate that. What do you, even though we're sort of talking about opportunities here and what's good and some of the concerns and some of the adversarial aspects of this, what are you pumped about right now with regard to AI, especially the expo coming up June 2nd and 4th, the AI Plus Expo? What are you excited about that's going to happen at the expo, and what the takeaways are going to be?
I mean, at the expo, we have a lot of so we have built the programming that there's a little bit about everything, not just like sitting and listening to this incredible conversation. We have a bookstore, which I love books, Larry, and so you have physically books there.
Wait, who needs a book? Just have AI read the book for you. Then you don't have to read a book.
No, I'm old school, but so we built a bookstore where you can enjoy a conversation with one of the authors that published books in this space in the last 12 months. We have a drone area where our military services will compete for 3 days in flying these first-person view drones and who's going to win there. So it's an area with obstacles, and they will fly drones. And like at the end of the third day, we will announce the winner, which service. As you know, our services are very competitive between Navy, Army, and the Air Force.
We're a Navy family. In fact, I live in Annapolis, so I'm very. But I got to give the Air Force or Space Force the edge on this one.
So we'll see. I'll let you know after 3 days who's going to win this. We also build a hackers area where we have 300 hackers for 3 days trying to build AI applications to help our science community, our national security community. And so for 3 days, incredible. This is our third hackathon, Larry, but like you see these people in like 5 hours building amazing AI applications. And now they have 3 days. At the end of the 3 day, they'll get a prize reward, whoever wins. But I'm also excited about that. We have a demo stage where companies, government agencies will hit the stage and do demos of the AI application or quantum application, and you can see firsthand how that looks like. We have a talent and marketplace, which, to your earlier point, we will have conversations about the future of work. People will hire on the spot. You can actually set up a job interview there with any of the companies. We have an app built for that. You can be interviewed on the spot and hopefully land a job on the spot. So we have built an entire program about people trying to understand what's going on, so you can listen, you can see these technologies, and if you're interested in changing jobs, you might even be able to do it on the spot there.
Man, I actually might fly my kid in from college. He's on the West Coast right now, but just for this experience, because
I think you'll love it.
For him.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, listen. Any last thoughts here? I guess obviously students, people who are in technology, maybe developers out there, or people who are in the DC area. A huge part of our audience are in the DC area, and they're sort of in this realm or policy making. How do they get to the expo? Is it open to anyone, by the way? And what are the details?
It's a free event, Larry. You go to our website, expo.scsp.ai. You just register, and then you build your own adventure when you get there. It's a 3-day event. I look, last year we had a blast, Larry. It was our first expo. I think I have made 45,000 steps by just walking around from the excitement and just looking at. I mean, every stage was packed with people. And just a side note, last year we had a tiny central stage focusing on the future of work and talent. But the interest about the future of work and AI was so huge that this year we're building an entire corner just for this. And I told you, people can schedule job interviews, they can land jobs there, because we just saw how much of an interest that topic was last year.
This sounds like something that Tony Stark would be attending. So people should get their butts over there. It's the AI Plus Expo. You just got all the details. June 2nd through 4th in your nation's capital. Eli Bayraktari, thank you so much for educating us and moving the ball a little bit on this exciting topic, but also a very serious topic when it comes to our future, our kids' future, and our national security. So good luck with the expo, and thanks for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me, Larry.
You bet. And that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for watching today. We will see you next time, same place. But in the meantime, my name is Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.